All right, today we're going to decode a secret language. It's one we all use, but let's be honest, we often get it wrong. We're going to get really sharp on the difference between what people say and what they actually mean.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're rushing to get to work, you spill coffee all over your white shirt, and you mutter to yourself, "Oh great, just what I needed." In that moment, you've just used one of the most powerful and tricky tools in human communication. You said the literal opposite of what you were feeling.
So let's dive in and really get a handle on this secret language. We'll start by digging into the powerful difference between irony and its, let's call it, its biting cousin, sarcasm. First up, irony. Now, you hear this word thrown around all the time, right? But it's probably one of the most misunderstood concepts out there. It shows up everywhere from classic books to our texts with our friends. So at its absolute core, irony is all about the gap. Yeah, the gap. It's that space between what things look like and what they really are, between the words someone uses and the meaning they're trying to get across. Now, this gap can be really funny, but it can also be used to make a huge critical point without having to spell it out. To really wrap our heads around this, let's jump in a time machine. We're going way back to 1729. An author named Jonathan Swift wanted to call attention to the absolutely horrific poverty in Ireland. But he didn't just write an angry pamphlet. Oh no, he proposed a modest solution. Swift, with a totally straight face in his writing, suggests that the poor Irish could climb out of poverty by selling their children as food for the rich. And notice the words he uses: delicious, nourishing, wholesome. It's almost like he's writing a cookbook recipe to describe something just monstrous. And that's exactly the reaction he wanted. Your brain just kind of short circuits, right? The idea is so shocking, so completely horrifying, that it forces you, the reader, to stop and ask, wait a minute, what is he really trying to say here? And this is where the irony just hits you like a ton of bricks. Swift uses words like delicious and nourishing to talk about cannibalism. That shocking collision between his polite, civilized language and his barbaric idea is the entire point. He's using irony to condemn the cold, heartless attitudes of the rich towards the poor, far more powerfully than just saying, you're being cruel. But irony isn't just about what we say. Sometimes it's about what happens. And this leads us right into something called situational irony, which is basically when life itself gives you an unexpected plot twist. You have definitely seen this a million times in movies and books. It's that classic twist ending. It's the moment where what happens is the complete opposite of what you thought was going to happen. You know, like a fire station burning down or a marriage counselor getting a divorce. For a perfect, classic example, we have to talk about the short story, The Gift of the Magi. The whole story is about a young, deeply in love, but very, very poor couple trying to buy each other the perfect Christmas gift. So just look at what happens here. The wife, Della, has this beautiful long hair. It's her most prized possession. She sells it to buy a platinum chain for her husband's beloved watch. At the exact same time, her husband, Jim, sells his treasured watch to buy a set of beautiful, expensive combs for her hair. Just think about that for a second. Both of these incredible sacrifices, made purely out of love, end up making the other person's gift totally useless. That right there is the beautiful, heartbreaking power of situational irony.
Okay, so we've got verbal irony, that gap between words and meaning, and situational irony, the gap between what we expect and what happens. Now, let's bring in irony's loud, aggressive, and, let's be honest, often meaner cousin, sarcasm. Here's the most important thing to remember. All sarcasm is ironic, but not all irony is sarcastic. Let me say that again because it's key. All sarcasm uses that gap we talked about, but not all irony has that same intent. Sarcasm basically takes irony and turns it into a weapon. Its goal is usually to mock or make fun of someone, and it has a sharp, bitter edge to it. It's pretty much the opposite of being sincere.
So how can you tell them apart? Well, it really just boils down to these three things. The intent of irony is just to highlight a contrast. Its tone can actually be pretty gentle or funny, and its target is often a situation or a big idea. But sarcasm, its intent is to mock. Its tone is sharp and bitter, and its target is almost always a specific person or group of people.
Okay, let's bring this into the modern world with an example that I think a lot of us might find painfully familiar: the passive-aggressive office memo. You can just feel the tone dripping off this sentence, can't you? Because absolutely nobody loves the smell of rotting fruit.
especially not on a Monday morning. So look at the language being used here. The person who wrote this is using all these positive words, right? Love, wonderfully, thoughtful, but they're using them to describe something disgusting and disrespectful. That clash, that intentional, kind of angry mismatch between the nice words and the nasty situation, that's textbook sarcasm. So what's the real message here? It's not actually about a deep love for pungent odors. It's simple. It's a direct command hidden under a layer of bitter humor. Clean out the fridge, you inconsiderate people. The sarcasm is there to make the point sharper and more critical. So we've been digging into the weeds of irony and sarcasm, looking at old books and office memos, but why does any of this really matter? Why is being able to tell them apart so incredibly important, especially right now? Well, because so much of our life now happens right here, through a screen. We live in a world of text messages, emails, social media posts, and comment sections where we lose all the normal human cues, like the tone of someone's voice or their body language. And in that world, a misunderstood joke or a sarcastic comment taken literally can absolutely explode into a massive conflict. Tone is everything. And this brings us to a really complex modern phenomenon, a term you hear a lot, cancel culture. Now, in this kind of environment, public statements get put under an intense microscope. A misstep in tone, whether it's a joke that doesn't land right or a sarcastic comment that gets misinterpreted, can sometimes spiral into public outrage, calls for boycotts, and can have some pretty serious personal consequences. And really, that's the big question I want to leave you with. In our world, where communication is instant, it's global, and it's so often stripped of all context, has our inability to correctly read tone become one of the most significant drivers of our conflicts? Is misunderstanding the difference between a joke and an insult, between irony and sarcasm, more dangerous now than it has ever been? It's something to think about.